guys, so we've got another little jousting match update between the Pac-12 and Big 12 and the expansion, and another article from Dennis Dodd. At this point, I mean, how many times can we really regurgitate the same thing? Big 12 ready to pounce on four corner schools as doubt creeps in about Pac-12's viability. So it seems like it's just the same thing said over and over again. But what's interesting about this is Utah's AD actually responded to this tweet in a quote tweet and said, "Give me a break." So that is interesting. In an article about the Big 12 supposedly talking to the four Pac-12 schools, including Utah, Utah's AD says, "Give me a break," basically refuting the idea and the entire article. And then, of course, we have some fan bickering in the comments. The Pac-12 with San Diego State is still a great conference. I mean, I think it's comparable to the Big 12. If the Pac-10 stays together, they add San Diego State and SMU, I would compare it to the Big 12. I mean, especially if the TV money is what people are thinking it's going to be, which is around $30 million, which is like $1 million less. The only problem right now with the Pac-12 is the situation surrounding who's actually going to broadcast the games, and the idea that Fox doesn't want to be involved, CBS doesn't want to be involved, NBC doesn't want to be involved, ESPN may only want 1 3-hour window a week, which could make it mainly streaming, which I think would probably be a big turnoff to Oregon and Washington and would make them more irrelevant. But when you compare the teams, like let's say the Pac-10 stays together, adds San Diego State and SMU, they're a very comparable conference to the expanded Big 12 without Oklahoma and Texas. Now, of course, if Oklahoma and Texas were still in that conference, the Big 12 would be significantly better. But without those teams, it gets real mid real quickly. Utah is not joining the truck stop conference. You won't have many choices. Hello, Mountain West. So we're getting more jousting from Pac-12 fans and Big 12 fans. But I would say this is at least semi-big. We're seeing, Utah seemingly refute the idea that they would be one of the schools interested in joining the Big 12. Of course, I still think all of this revolves around what happens with Oregon and Washington. If Oregon and Washington say we're staying in the Pac-12 no matter what, I really don't see much of a reason for Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado to leave the conference. But of course, if those teams want to go to the Big Ten, which I surmise they would, considering even if they take a pay cut to go to the Big Ten, meaning the Big Ten doesn't give them a full, amount of money, like they get 50% or 75% the first 4 years, they would still go because over time it's going to be so much more because the Big Ten's TV deal is so much better. And of course, if that happens, it's a house of cards. The conference becomes so weak without Oregon and Washington, it collapses. And then you've got Arizona State, and these other schools going to the Big 12, which is kind of why I've always believed the idea and all of these reports saying that the four corner schools are talking to the Big 12 to keep their options open in the event that Oregon and Washington do end up leaving. You can see in the report, Dodd wrote that the Big 12 commissioner continues to pursue the Pac-12 four-corner schools. There have been weekly conversations between the Big 12 and these four programs as talks have heated up, one league insider tells CBS Sports. 3 high-ranking industry sources in the last week told CBS Sports they believe Yormark is going to be successful in luring at least some combination of four-corner schools. Some went further speculating the Pac-12 was a couple of weeks away from dissolving, the dam breaking in a sense, one source says, as is confidence in the Pac-12 getting a new media rights deal that will keep the 10 schools together. Again, I think this is a situation where it all depends on Washington and Oregon, whether or not they want to stay, go, and it's all based on how good the TV deal ends up being. What we do know is someone isn't telling the truth. Either multiple Pac-12 schools are in talks with the Big 12 or they're not. I mean, I think it's fairly safe to say, even with Utah's AD coming out and saying this, I mean, there's no way all of these stories that CBS Sports has written, however biased people may think CBS Sports is, there's no way all of these have no substance to them. I would say the four corner schools are keeping their options open in the event that Washington and Oregon want to jump ship because the TV deal's terrible or because it's fully streaming or something like that. So they're keeping their options open. I will say this tweet from Utah's AD is at least interesting. It's truly that simple. Who is telling the truth? Who is lying? That remains to be seen. But there are simply too many dueling narratives. Yeah, so I don't really, it's one of those things. He could be tweeting that to try and gain some type of advantage in terms of negotiating to the Big 12, although that's kind of like a 6D chess move. I don't know if that's really what's happening, but I mean, they're saying this tweet will certainly haunt him. I mean, it's a tweet. I don't think it really, they're either going to join or not join. If they join, I guess he looks bad, but people forget about it in a week. I don't really see that being a big deal. And then, so when it comes to that situation, I still think those schools are just waiting to see what Oregon and Washington do, because again, all of the estimates are actually looking like it's only going to be, their TV deal is only going to be like 1 or 2 million less than what the Big 12 got. And it makes sense. I mean, the Big 12 really doesn't have any super teams that are going to draw crazy ratings and, get them a huge TV deal. Once you lose Texas and Oklahoma, you lose your blue bloods. I will say the Big 12, with the addition of the 4 schools, BYU, Cincinnati, that is going to help them in terms of the depth of their conference. But in terms of a blue blood, there's just no blue bloods there with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. So the idea that they're going to get a comparable TV deal in terms of money doesn't surprise me. The hang-up issue is Fox is not interested in them. CBS seemingly is not interested in. I mean, CBS is releasing articles daily about the Pac-12 dying. We know CBS is not interested in the Pac-12. NBC already is in bed with the Big Ten. So it comes down to ESPN and crappy Apple TV or Amazon, which is streaming, and just how much of their TV deal will be streaming, and will it end up forcing Oregon and Washington to look elsewhere because they don't want to be irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Only accessing your live games via stream is something that would turn Oregon and Washington off, I'm sure. Now, would it turn them off enough to actually leave and actively try and join the Big Ten? I don't know. How would the finances work with the Big Ten when it comes to Oregon and Washington joining? Would they have to take a cut? Would it be like 50%? At least for the first 3 or 4 years, that's something they would have to iron out. But I think it's a reactionary thing. The 4 corner schools, I would say, are definitely, even with Utah's AD coming out, there's some schools talking, you would think, with the Big 12 commissioner in the event stuff goes crazy to join that conference. And then we have Nick Saban coming out and saying, I would much rather us adopt the NFL model than where we are right now. Nick Saban basically saying there should be a salary cap in college football. And it's just a complete disaster when you look at, actually instituting a salary cap. The way these kids' deals, NIL deals, are working, they're sponsorships. Like, how do you so a kid gets a 3-year deal for $9 million or something. Is that like $3 million per year? So that's $3 million off your salary cap. Like, there's just no way to do this correctly. College football was simply not meant for the NIL era. But of course, with where we are right now in college football and the overall landscape, you have to pay the kids, otherwise we're going to get more Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons situations, and it's not going to be because of the pandemic. It's because these kids are sitting out with no reason to play because they're already top 10 picks. They don't have to play their junior years. They have no money incentive. That's why you need the money, unfortunately. But how do you put a salary cap into something that's already so shady? There's no way to properly do it. The NIL is such a mess, man. There's no other way to describe NIL other than a total mess. That's what it is. Some of the schools are giving more money, some are giving less money, some don't care, some think it's going to be bad for the locker room, and these kids are yo-yoing, ping-ponging in between teams. I'm going to transfer here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. There's no stability. There's no rule enforcement. And it's funny that there's so many people that love college football and the infrastructure of it is so weak and so fragile. There's no law and order in college football at all with NIL. There's zero. So, how do you put a salary cap in? I don't know. But I did just want to talk about that because I saw that was something that was said. I do agree. I would love for there to be a quote-unquote equal playing field to where you can only spend this amount of money, but what if teams don't disclose how much kids are getting? It's not like programs are paying kids, right? These are coming from outside, independent, entities that are giving kids this money for a quote-unquote sponsorship or whatever. Whatever they want to say just to get kids to come to their school. So that is what's going on there. But guys, when it comes to the current Pac-12 situation, that was an interesting tweet from Utah. And now it's like Utah is enemy numero uno for a lot of these Big 12 fans. And now they're making a bunch of memes you can see there. Grown Ups. Grown Ups is an underrated movie. Doesn't get talked about. That's a good Adam Sandler movie. Low effort meme to end the night. Yes. So I guess Utah now is on. Could we see a situation where maybe it's another team other than Utah? I don't want to speculate too much on the tweet, but maybe that's what ends up happening. We'll have to see. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.